Hello everyone. Today's video is going to be for the weirdos in every family, for the spiritual people in every family, the black sheep, the people who are regarded as a little bit woo-woo and strange, because the holiday season is coming up indeed with Christmas. Thanksgiving already happened for those of you who live in the USA. The whole Advent time is a huge deal here in Europe. And of course, you also have New Year's. So there's a lot of opportunities to see your family, and not all of us are entirely comfortable with our families, to say the least. So I want to make this video in which you will learn how to stay in alignment with everything that you've achieved throughout your spiritual life without compromising yourself, and handling your families in all the various ways in which they need to be handled. So we're going to go through 4 issues that can pop up during the holidays, or even when you see your family during birthdays, any day really. So if you're a spiritual person, a witch, a pagan, someone who is on a path of self-development, you will probably not want to compromise your authenticity and not compromise all of those insights that you had when you see your family, who may not be as accepting and understanding of your current self. But we've worked hard on cultivating that path of self-development and of growth. So I think dealing with family who aren't accepting of that change or who aren't accepting of your path has a lot of facets to it. So today's video is going to be all about that. And it is for people who want to sort of remain in the closet spiritually. If you don't want to tell everybody in your family about your spiritual path, about your growth, but rather kind of keep it a little bit hidden, keep it on the down low, because you know they will probably not understand. But at the same time, you want to act in alignment with it and not fall back into old patterns, etc. So we are going to tackle 4 different issues pertaining to that and pertaining to the communication with family. I'm Anya Esma, by the way. If you're new here, welcome. If you want to dwell in my domain a little longer, then you can subscribe to me. If you're already subscribed, I love you, thank you. And I'm a little bit sick right now, so my voice is a tiny bit strange, but you might not even notice with this microphone. At the very end of the video, I'm also going to talk about a little bit of criticism of something in the community that I see a lot when it comes to handling holidays with the family, but I will save that for last, and first we are going to tackle those issues. So I just want to reiterate who this video is for and whether you can recognize yourself in that description. So if you are dedicated to self-development and you are dedicated to achieving it through spiritual means, changing your life, being open to the ever-changing possibilities of what could happen to you, and also healing old wounds, that makes your life a little bit different from other people's lives, and it makes you a little bit hard to understand for those who are not on that path of healing or psychotherapy or spirituality, whatever you are into. So witches, pagans, spiritual people, woke people, all of these can become a little bit of a black sheep in families that aren't entirely woke themselves. So if your family isn't evolving with you, or isn't accepting of your path, or has a lot of bad opinions about anything in the world really, which is easy nowadays, then this video is definitely going to give you some insight on how you can handle that and how you can handle that sort of conflict. Okay, the first issue that we sometimes have to deal with during the holidays, of course, is questions that we do not want to answer. Questions that come from a malicious place, that are intrusive, especially when they question our path or our positive changes. This may come in the form of a relative seeing something in your house that is spiritual, if you are celebrating at your own house, and quizzing you about it, like, why do you have a cauldron? Why do you have this book by Eckhart Tolle? Why do you have whatever spiritual thing? And then maybe they ask something like, oh, you're into self-help now, is that it? Or maybe they say, why are you acting so differently? Why are you so weird today? Even though you're just being in a more positive mindset and they aren't used to it. So all of these questions revolve around the issue of them not accepting you as a whole person, but kind of wanting the old you back. And the way I handle this is I have three options here. The first one I am not good at all, which is diverting attention. So you can quickly acknowledge what they said and say, yeah, it's just a book I'm reading. Anyway, here's the pumpkin pie or something like that. As you can see, my example is already lacking. I'm not good at this. I'm good at clear and honest communication, but I'm not very good at like giving a talk a direction that I want to avoid and putting it onto a different train track. Can you say that? A different track? Anyway, if you're good at that, then you can definitely use this. For me, it would be awkward. So you have diverting attention. The second option is saying that you don't know what they mean and asking them a counter question that comes from a genuine place of curiosity. For example, yes, I've changed in a lot of ways. Which one do you mean specifically? Or what do you want me to talk about, and kind of get clear on their intention here. You want to find out why it is they are asking you about your cauldron, about a book, about why you've changed. Just kind of be like, yeah, I don't know. I have changed probably. I don't know exactly what you mean. Let's talk about it, And I think that can go a long way in shutting people up if you ask them a counter question, because then they have to be specific and the ball is in their court, which is kind of the premise of the third way of dealing with intrusive, unwanted questions, which is to say you don't know, like you don't know the answer, or that you would have to think about it. Because the issue is when someone comes to you with a question like that, like, oh, why are you into self-help now? Or why do you have this book? What they usually expect is that you have all the answers. They are going to really get to know the real tea about you with this question, with this intrusive question. But the thing is, on our paths, especially spiritual paths, we often do not have all the answers, and that is okay. And I think what we really have to see here is that just because someone expects us to have all the answers, that doesn't mean we have to give them to them or even have them ourselves. So the burden of explanation, put it from yourself to the other person. This is really powerful because a lot of people do not admit when they don't know something or when they have to think about something. And that is why this silences people. If you look at them and you say, hey, honestly, I don't know the answer to that question right now. I'd have to think about it a lot. But if you ever want to talk about it again, let me know. Or something like that, where you come across as approachable without going into any malicious intent that they may have, or even if they have good intent, even if they are just curious, but you don't want to give that much of yourself to that person, it's perfectly fine to say, I don't exactly know how to answer that, or I have to think about this, ask me again later, something like that, It gives a clear communication to the other person and also shows that you're open to it if they may want to re-engage with it later. The second situation that we struggle with during the holidays as spiritual people or as people with strong opinions and our own paths is feeling stuck in the middle of discussions that make our blood boil or trigger us in some way. Especially if you're on a healing journey and you are with people who may have hurt you or who mention people that may have hurt you, this is a very problematic one. This can also be about the general world though, sexist comments, racist comments, those may put you in a position where you're in a discussion that you don't really want to be in right now. Now, this is really one of the most effective things I do when I am at family gatherings and something gets talked about that I don't want to engage with, that I don't want to hear about, and that I don't really want to be a part of. And that is to see it as a major opportunity for reflection and for shadow work. So if you take a step back and kind of become analytical and watch everybody discussing things, then you can identify a lot of the trauma, a lot of the difficulty that your family carries with them. For example, whenever there's a weird discussion going on or something that I'm uncomfortable with is going on, I just sort of look at this one branch of my family who engages in this behavior, and I think I am reminded of the fact that two of the main shadows of my family are invalidating other people's feelings and bickering about really unimportant things and being uberly logical. Is uberly a word? It sounds like an app, honestly, like the little sister of Uber. Anyway, sponsor me Uberly if you exist. No, I'm just kidding. Anyway, so yes, logical bickering like that. And every time I feel like I gain the insight again, hey, I'm out of this. I have moved past that family shadow. I have healed that part of myself that needs to invalidate others or that needs to bicker about everything and be right about everything. And that makes me feel good as I watch all of them go at it. So essentially, if you're into tarot, you are going to understand this. Make it a hanged man moment. And what I mean by this, if you're not into tarot, is that the card, the Hanged Man, is essentially about being stuck in a period of gestation, in a period of immobility, but at the same time having an opportunity for growth because of that situation that you are stuck in. And you can get some enlightenment. It is an opportunity, not a trap. So if you're stuck in a family situation, see it as an opportunity, not a trap. Now, I know where this gets a little bit more problematic is when you actively get engaged by people and they want you to take part of the discussion. And this is sort of what the third point is about. So let's move on to that. So the third issue is being thrown back into old patterns of being. This can mean arguing, this can mean interacting in ways that you interacted as a child, or it can mean forgetting yourself, saying yes, being very submissive to everybody, doing what everybody wants, just old patterns that aren't in alignment anymore with who you are. For me personally, that would be eye rolls. I roll my eyes a lot when someone does a sexist or a racist comment, any sort of remark. It annoys me. I roll my eyes. I have this outward reaction. That is an old pattern that I have, or an old way of interacting with my family, or one branch of my family that I have. And that's problematic, and that's something that I have overcome pretty much entirely at this point. And I think that is really the key here, because it's not going to be easy to not be thrown back into these old ways. But a position of non-interaction is really the best to be at, where you remind yourselves with words of power or with affirmations not to fall back into old patterns. I know this is going to sound very solemn, but for example, you could have an affirmation like, I cultivate new patterns and stay in alignment with my new self. It sounds very grandiose and kind of arrogant, but I think, if you're sitting at a table and someone is trying to ignite a discussion with you, breathing and saying that affirmation to yourself can do a lot. So essentially, don't play games, avoid direct confrontation if you can. However, there's one caveat with all of this. If someone directly speaks to you, and I talked about this on my Patreon a little while ago, sure as hell, someone is going to try to pull you back into old patterns. Not because they're a bad person, but just because they know you, they think they know you, and they know how you are. So they will read into your reaction even if you do not have a strong reaction. An example of this is whenever there is a sexist or racist comment being made in one part of my family, I have to really keep this under control. I do not react to it anymore because I know it will just lead to needless discussions. If you feel like having a discussion and trying to teach people, that's great, but I know that that is not going to accomplish anything with these people, so I don't do it. Not to mention that they get off on the fact that I get mad and annoyed and irritated. That's just how it is. So stick with yourself, stick with your energy, keep a straight face. Even if someone says, hey, what do you think about this? You can say, I don't know, or I don't really want to be a part of this. All of that is an option. And if they keep engaging you and they're like, why don't you want to be a part of it? You know, you can just withdraw and be like, I don't know. Just kind of act blasé about it, I suppose. Because if you give away too much, if you give them too much, they are just going to keep questioning you. So just stay neutral, stay with you. Do not accept the burden of explanation for why you want to be outside of certain discussions. You do not have to explain yourself. Stick with yourself, stick with your energy, and let everybody else spend their energy on whatever they want to spend it on without judgment. If they have fun with it, that's fine. But you don't have to be a part of it, even if they actively ask you. You can still stay in the newer version of yourself rather than falling back into an old version. The fourth issue is needing validation from your family. Now, this is something that you might have to work on outside of these family gatherings. This is not like a direct tip for when you're there, but it's more something that you have to do in the background in order to have a healthy relationship and a healthy approach to these sorts of gatherings. Because in the end, you have to know yourself. You have to know what you want, who you are, maybe even write down some characteristics of how you are, what your identity is, what your life is like, what you want your life to be like. And when you have that stronger position to operate from, it's going to go a long way to help you not be drawn in to the need of needing validation from others, especially from family. Obviously, there are some old wounds always in play when you see your family. There may have been a lack of validation, a lack of attention, a lack of being seen as a child, as for many of us, and that makes it really easy for us to slip into still needing validation, still wanting to hear, yes, your spiritual path is great, I'm so happy that you are changing and bettering yourself. But with some families, that is not going to happen, which doesn't mean that your family is like that. That is completely up for you to decide or to analyze. But I think it's important to recognize that with some parts of our families, we're not going to get the support that we are hoping for, even in a million years. So don't get stuck in that weird space between, I secretly kind of want to tell them about my spirituality and about my healing, but I'm not going to, so I will just drop hints and be mysterious about it and hope that someone asks. You know, that's not a good space to be in. In the end, you want to think about, why do you want people to understand you so badly? Why do you want people to see you so badly? And is this really the space to take it out on them, to make them a part of your process? Because sure enough, you can talk to your mother, your father, or someone else in your family about this stuff, but maybe family gatherings where everybody is already kind of, there's a lot of tension, everybody is kind of on edge, isn't the best place. If you want validation, if you want to be seen, think about doing it outside of a gathering like that, maybe. Not coming out to absolutely everyone. Now, lastly, I want to talk about something that bothers me a little bit about how this is discussed in the general discourse on like Instagram, in the whole spiritual community, on YouTube. I think sometimes it would help us to remember that openness and vulnerability are strengths, not weaknesses. And that if you are strong in your path, there is not necessarily a pain in letting others know. So what I mean by this is a lot of the memes, a lot of the discourse are like, okay, tough shit. You're going to have to grow some balls, grow some ovaries when you are with your family and really be strong, set boundaries around them, push people away, toxic people, bye. And you know, that whole discourse about being very resistant to your family, I think isn't always helpful. I think, yes, if your family is super problematic and you really see no way of interacting with them in any positive manner, then that makes sense. But I think it does help to think about, what is my family like? How accepting are they? Because your fears of not being understood shouldn't stand in your way of sharing your path. I think that happens a lot, where people anticipate resistance from their families and then don't share their path. And I think that's not entirely healthy either. You just kind of have to reflect on what your family is like. So take everything I said in this video with a grain of salt, essentially, and make it fit your family and your circumstances. Because for me, I have like 3 main branches to my family that act very differently and have very different atmospheres depending on who is there. So I wouldn't apply this to each and every single one of them, even though I pick and choose these methods for all of them, sort of. So think about that. Think about what fits your family and your interactions with them. I hope you enjoyed this. I will link some more videos below and also drop a link to my Patreon. Subscribe to me, like this video if you liked it. That always helps. And leave a comment about whether you are looking forward to seeing your family or are more like, maybe not. Maybe you're not seeing family at all. Sometimes that's the healthiest thing. And yeah, let me know how you handle these situations, because more tips are always great, especially if people actively antagonize you, because I don't have a lot of experience with that. If you have any stories about actively being antagonized and asked, let me know and share it with everyone below so that we can all learn from each other. All right, I hope that you have the greatest of days, the greatest of weeks, and I will see you very, very soon.